were using it to build the pyramids and do all the things, the great civilizations that Satan built on the earth in the ancient world.
We can pretty much be, as Eric Vadonican says, we can already, if we wanted to, we could go to Mars, and other planets, and especially Mars, and create life. Mm-hmm. Or, as it says in the Bible, create man in our image and after our likeness. What does that sound like? That sounds like DNA, that sounds like getting down to the DNA structure, it's really fascinating, because if you think it explains so many answers, Mm-hmm. But let's say that's true. Mm-hmm. Let's say that's true. That that I guess that's a good way to put it. Ancient astronauts, whatever. But before God or the ancient astronauts or whoever, before they created Adam and Eve, was there already a man here on Earth that was part of natural evolution, like the Neanderthal or other prehistoric?
Well, there were many types of creatures on the Earth in primitive history, early history, but we have no definition of what they were. We know that Satan was using genetic manipulation. If you look at the reliefs on some of the Egyptian and other ancient civilizations, you see that they have a human body with a lion head, or you see a lion with a human hand sucking his thumb.
Yeah.
So it's clear that in the ancient world, Satan was using genetic manipulation, and some of those creatures were created and no doubt died out, even the Minotaur and so on, things like that. So some of those creatures, we may find skeleton remains of them, but they are not what we would call descendants of Adam,
Yeah.
There's been no change in mankind. Mankind is as he was created, and that's the way he'll be until the earth is God's incubator of souls for the next life. That's the way I see it. And we pass through this time and go into the next life, and those who be judged there will be judged for 1,000 years. Those who pass that time will become part of the kingdom of God and no longer be subject to judgment. And so I think that's a wonderful message for mankind. It certainly would give us all great hope, instead of telling us that we're going to burn in hell or that we're just descendants of the apes with no future. I mean, those are terrible options.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I was raised as a Pentecostal. I quit going to church probably around the age of 15, mm-hmm. and I get more satisfaction, more hope, more ambition, more morals from listening and reading to people like you and others out there.
Well, keep reading the Bible, because it's wonderful history, and I advise you to get a copy of Josephus and read that. And I'm writing 3 books on Josephus right now, and they'll start coming out later this year. They're fascinating books on the fall of Jerusalem and the Battle of Armageddon. And you will find Josephus to be a fascinating historian, and I believe that he was inspired by God, and that he wrote he was the eyewitness to the fulfillment of the prophecies. So he's a very important historian and prophet.
Yeah, I was, just about the hell thing, like many people believe if they don't look, because I was raised if you look outside the Bible, you're going to hell. Mm-hmm. If you don't believe exactly word for word what it says, and what it says, everything in the Bible isn't a metaphor. I was raised a hardcore.
Mm-hmm. So was I. Well, I wasn't. I was raised a Catholic, but eventually in the born again movement became hardcore. But if you study the Bible as history, it'll give you a wonderful message.
It does.
If you go to my website, Realists, that's REALISTS.org or net.com, and go to Christianity, Truth versus Myth. In there, in that link, there's a list of scriptures. If you look up every one of those scriptures, you will find that the Battle of Armageddon is over. It's history.
Why does modern academia need to be able to set these issues, which you cover in Awful Truth?
Well, they have to avoid them because they've taken rigid stands on either atheism or theology or religion. So they already have two paradigms that are in conflict, and they're clashing, and they've caused all the holy wars and violent atheistic revolutions of history, including all the wars. Yeah. So they have a lot to atone for, and then just like the Dark Age Church, academia actually comes out of the Dark Age Church. It really does. Academia was created in the battle between the atheists and the Dark Age priests of the Catholic Church. That's where academia began. So it has this unending battle going on, and it's too rigid to, it's really has nothing to do with academia in a way, because academia is supposed to be a place where new ideas are, welcomed and debated and researched. But quite the contrary, it's just the opposite. They ban the Bible as a history book. They should be studying it in every grade school as history, and it would do wonderful things for mankind.
What is the purpose of our creation?
Well, if you read early in Genesis, God wanted to have a being that he could interact with and communicate with. And so we were given free will, which we had, and that free will allowed Adam and Eve to take the knowledge of good and evil, and that's why we're in death. But you see, if you want to see the genius of it, certainly God knew what Adam was going to do. I mean, he has all knowledge. So he allowed Adam to fail, knowing that he would be put into death and that he would send a rescuer for him. And now, if you think about it, we've already experienced the punishment as descendants of Adam. So when we go into the next life and we come under the day of judgment, we'll be circumspect. We'll already know. Nobody's going to want to come back here, especially when you get to Eden or paradise or wherever that is. Jesus said, "Eye has not seen, nor is the mind of man capable of imagining what God has in store for him." So, nobody's going to want to come back into death. So the fact that we have already experienced this, you just look at the genius of it. God allowed us to already experience the punishment so no one could say, hey, look, I didn't know how bad it was going to be. We already do know. And so I think that bodes well for mankind, because having already experienced the punishment, they'll be circumspect, and most people will pass that test that's coming.
What, in your opinion, do you believe the fallen angels are that are mentioned in the Bible?
Well, that's the satanic side. That's the word angel is messenger. It means messenger. It was a servant of God who was close at the throne of the Almighty and interacted with God and had great knowledge and great power. And they became the fallen angels with Satan, who was the most glorious of them, or really Lucifer. And they were driven from heaven and given dominion over death. And that's why Satan had dominion over death here on the planet Earth up until the second coming of Jesus in AD 70, when they were wiped out and the humans inherited the earth.
Is the Sumerian flood story, which is the epic of Gilgamesh, the same flood story in the Bible?
Well, yes, absolutely. It's not just there. It's in almost every culture. Ancient culture has some type of flood story. But you have to remember that Satan was the great imitator, and they also have creation stories. Yeah. Satan was a great imitator. So when he came to mankind, he came to them as God, and he deceived them to believe that he was God. And you see it on several different continents, that you see that there are creation stories in the pagan religions, and those creation stories are imitation stories where Satan was trying to make himself God, so he was creating these incredible stories of creation. But there's only one true story of creation, and that's the biblical creation.
Who do you believe?
By the way, the flood is very real, and I have a book coming out on that will give empirical evidence that the flood did happen.
Are you able to say the name of your book?
Well, it's probably, I have a temporary title for it right now called Tilted Axis. It has to do with the tilting of the axis of the Earth. Okay. But I really haven't decided fully on a title.
Okay. Who do you believe created the pyramids, and for what reason? Because I hear so many things, that they weren't able to be able to do that with, even though they had 100,000 men for 20 years nonstop, it would take to build the pyramids. And also here,